and take up one matter, and then we will the Plan Commission will go in recess if there's a quorum for the Zoning Board, and we'll do the joint meeting. After the joint hearing, the Zoning Board will deliberate on the matters over which they have jurisdiction, which is the special use and the variance. And after that happens, the Plan Commission will deliberate on the plan unit development proposal for the site that is now occupied and will continue to be occupied by Walgreens. And then the Plan Commission will look at the remainder of its agenda. Craig, have you received any communications regarding the drive-through facility that is the subject of item 3 on our agenda?
Yes, good evening. We have received a communication from Edgemark Development requesting a 30-day continuance to the April 11th, 2012 Plan Commission meeting so that they can continue discussions with their contract tenant, Chase Bank, for the property at 2628 Grosse Pointe Road. That letter is attached in your Plan Commission packet and dated March 5th.
Let me ask the members of the Plan Commission if there is a motion.
Is there anybody here from the neighborhood that came to talk or been inconvenienced because they came last time? So we'd like to know, is there anybody here from the community that has any, that wanted to say something? Because this will be the second meeting they've asked for a continuance, correct?
Before we take up statements, let me ask if there is a motion, and then we'll have discussion on the motion, including public comment.
Move to continue.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there discussion from the board, or do you want to hear from the member of the public who's here first?
My concern is that the public keeps showing up, and we keep having requests for continuances, and so that's just my concern.
Does a member of the public wish to address us tonight? If you do, could you come forward and to the podium and state your name and address?
Hello, my name is Allison Cook, and I live at 2721 Thayer Court. I'm about a block from the proposed development site, and I don't think it's fair for me to say that I speak for my entire community. I just came here to see what the outcome of this meeting would be, and I guess there has been considerable frustration that it's been put off, and we would like a decision to be made sooner rather than later. But as I said, I don't speak for the entire community, just for myself. That I love seeing you guys, but I don't want to have to come every month. I would like them to make a decision about what they're going to do with the property, and let's move forward. We haven't been enthusiastic, as you know, from the many letters that the community members have sent to you, and from the petition saying that we were against the idea of a 3-lot solution, or a solution, that's not really the right word, but for 3 lots being developed.
The question before us is just the continuance,
okay.
Not the substance.
Well,
but I understand it, and I appreciate your coming, and I'm sorry we can't
resolve it tonight.
Resolve.
Okay, well, thank you.
Is there any discussion from members of the Plan Commission? Is there any discussion from staff?
Dennis Moreno, Manager of Planning and Zoning for the city. Staff has been in touch with the applicant. You have the document in front of you. They've requested the continuance. Staff recommends that be granted. We're hopeful that they'll be with us next month at the date requested with a plan of action. But we can't be certain of that at this point, but staff feels it's worth the extra time.
Any further discussion from commission members? All those in favor of granting the continuance?
Aye.
Opposed? the continuance is granted. And at this point, the Plan Commission meeting will be in recess till after the joint meeting. And on my left is the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, who will introduce the next matter.
Thank you. Just to confirm before we get started, I want to make sure that we are recording properly in the back.
Everything okay?
Thank you.
We have an upward thumb signal.
We've learned our lesson. Good evening. This is a public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Plan Commission of the City of Evanston. Zoning ordinance empowers this board to hear references from the City Council, applications for variances and special uses, and appeals from the decisions of the zoning administrator. Additionally, the Plan Commission will be hearing this matter in terms of a plan development. Depending on the type of matter, we will either make a final determination or send our recommendation to the City Council. Present here tonight are our board members, who's here? Beth McLennan, Andrew Gallimore, Matthew Rogers, and I am Lori Summers, the current chair. So therefore, we have a quorum of the zoning board. Also here from city staff this evening are Melissa Klotz, Dennis Marino, Ken Cox, and Craig Sklinar. And would you like to introduce the Plan Commission? You're gonna wait?
I'll wait.
Okay. This is a formal hearing, and we have rules that govern our proceedings. Our most important rule is that only one person may speak at a time without interruption. It is not just civility, but it is necessary to accurately record our proceedings. Anyone who wishes to address the board regarding any matter on the agenda will have an opportunity to do so at the appropriate time. Our normal procedure is that we hear first from the staff on the documents in the file. We will then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. After the applicant or appellant has completed their initial submission, any person who has a legal interest in real property located within 500 feet of the property that is the subject of the application or appeal may then present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. Next, others who wish to make a statement regarding the matter may do so at that time. When all opposing testimony and other statements have been received, the applicant or appellant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Board members may ask questions of anyone offering testimony at any time. All testimony and statements will be under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, we ask that you limit your testimony or statement to your own personal knowledge. When you testify or make a statement, please tell us your name and address, and be certain that your name is printed on the pad provided outside. Because we do not have a court reporter, it is imperative that you speak into a microphone so that your testimony or statement will be recorded. We are audio and video recorded in this room. When all of the testimony, other evidence, and statements have been received, we will close the record and begin our deliberations.
The rules of the Plan Commission require that the staff read into the record and identify the documents that have been received in this matter. Craig, are you ready to do so? You don't have to read the documents, just identify them.
Right. First, to read the agenda item, Craig Stevens Development applies for a planned development project to construct a Walgreens at 635 Chicago. Section 61019D1 of the zoning code states any area of the zoning lot to be improved with new construction that is in excess of 30,000 square feet must apply for a planned development. 635 Chicago is located in the C1A commercial mixed-use zoning district, which requires a special use permit for a drive-through facility to operate. The applicant requests a rear yard setback that abuts a residential district separated by a public alley of 0 feet, where 10 feet is required. Zoning Code Section 61038D. The Plan Commission and ZBA will make a recommendation to City Council, the final determining body. Entered into the record for this plan development is a memorandum from city staff entered March 9th, 2012. The February 22nd, 2012 Spark minutes concerning this, and the 635 Chicago Avenue plan development application that includes a zoning analysis, the pre-application conference materials, a public benefit statement, development plan, landscape plan, plat of survey, preliminary plat of subdivision, plan development application form, certificate of disclosure of ownership interest form, open space maintenance provision statement, restrictive covenants, schedule of development, economic feasibility statement, traffic circulation impact study, plan compliance, neighborhood compatibility, special use application form, request for development allowances, proof of ownership, and general conditions for plan development in business districts. In addition, there is a 3 letters provided to us today via email that I've provided to each member sitting here of citizen comment as well that is entered as an additional exhibit.
Our rules provide that the city staff may begin by explaining the proposal to us, and then we will proceed with the developer's statements. I'm going to ask that anyone who wishes to speak, including attorneys who are giving evidence, raise their right hand to take an oath. Do you swear or affirm you will tell the truth in this case? Yes. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to introduce Rick Strusner with Craig Stevens Development tonight. He's the owner of the property at 635 Chicago. They came to us in December requesting to deconstruct the existing Walgreens that's been there for 25 years and reconstruct a new Walgreens in its place. Pursuant to a zoning analysis, we determined that this does require a plan development because of its lot size, and also a special use because the location of the drive-through is moving on-site as well. Presented to you tonight is the full plan development application. Some items of note: we are able to work with the Amley development adjacent to the property so that the entire block of Chicago Avenue from Keeney to Kedzie will be rebuilt in the streetscape that was approved in the early part of 2005, 2006. There are pedestrian connections on site that have been requested by the aldermen, actually connecting from Chicago Avenue and Kedzie to the sidewalks on the strip mall development as well, and the relocation of parking from the back of the property to the front in line with existing parking that's there as well, bringing the new Walgreens in line with the existing retail property as well. I will turn it over to Rick to provide his presentation.
Let me ask anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to sign in on the sign-in sheet, which is located near the door, so that we can identify you later and also call on you to speak.
We okay? Yeah, okay. Good evening. My name is Rick Strusner. I'm the president of Craig Stevens Development Corporation, the developers and owners of the subject property. It's the same developer and owner ever since it was changed to a shopping center 25 years ago. Actually, Rick Stevens Strusner Associates was the architects at that time, and we have owned the property, for the 25 years. My first comment is that it's interesting that I'll drive by the property from time to time, and it was only recently, it was actually probably last July or August, I drove by, and while sitting in my car, I called my brother and I said, "You've got to get over here to see what's happening on Chicago Avenue." And and that, between the townhouse condominiums built to our south, and now Amley is being built to the north, and the reconstruction of what the railroad tracks and that wall. And I said, we need to bring this property up to date with what is happening. It's really quite exciting from Maine and Chicago going south. And so we decided to go to Walgreens, which has no obligation to do anything. We have a long-term lease with them. And we went to them and said, what would you think of building a new store? And they thought about it, and they said, you know, that sounds like a great idea, which surprised us. And that they'd be willing to actually close the store and let us reconstruct a store for them. And then we met with the city, first with Craig, and Craig has been absolutely terrific, getting us to know everybody at the city. And we went through our zoning analysis and went through everything that we needed to do to see what the process would be. The one requirement from Walgreens is that the only time that they're willing to close a store is from February 15th to October 15th, that they must be open October 15th. They cannot give up Thanksgiving, Christmas, and that whole season is very critical to them. So our first approach was, well, could we do it this February 15th? And obviously, once we started exploring everything, we were not going to make this February 15th. So Walgreens then, we had already had a letter from them saying that they would do that. And they issued us another letter saying that they would consider then February 15th of 2013 for the construction period. So then we started to work on the agenda and the calendar. The first one was on already. Okay. The purpose of what we're doing here is first to demolish the existing Walgreens, the video store, and the associated parking that goes with that, front and back. Build a new Walgreens and improve the facade of the remaining retail building. Item B up there is provide improved site circulation and better parking, the way it all flows together, and provide new pedestrian walk and landscaping along Chicago Avenue and Keeney. When we met with the staff, we were shown what Gowalt Hamilton and the city had designed and Tesca along Chicago Avenue, and realized that, you know, we need to tie into all of that also. In order to do that, two things became apparent. The existing, we actually have an ordinance that allows for the drive-through, but because we're moving it, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 feet, but it's not going back exactly where it is, that it was determined that we needed a new ordinance allowing the drive-through. And then as we got into the plans with Walgreens and the city, when we purchased the property 25 years ago, evidently the ordinance did not have the 0 lot line requirement, because we built our small shops to the north of the building all along the alley there. And actually, when we first met with Craig, I don't know what we were reading in the ordinance, but we were told that we had 0 lot lines all around the property. But as it was investigated, it was discovered that subsequently it has changed to a 10-foot setback when abutting apartments or residential. So therefore, we need to, in order to accommodate the layout, we need to ask for a variation on that requirement, making it a 0-foot setback. This is the existing conditions, although right now, all of this here, that's the car agencies. That has all been knocked down, and Amling is under construction. But you could see where it says South Point Plaza, the small shops being where the word South Point is, and where the plaza is just about, where the Walgreens is. Behind is the alley that separates the apartments or residential from our property, and to the right, which is the south, is Keeney, and then below, which is to the west, is Chicago Avenue. There is a survey showing what I've just described, the existing small shops to remain and the existing to be removed. And then this is our new plan with the streetscape and with the landscaping of where the Walgreens would be, the driveway being to the south side of the building. I think the next one, no, okay. So the driveway comes in off Keeney into the south and then back out onto Keeney. And then we've improved the whole circulation pattern of the parking. We've improved the driveway entrances on Chicago Avenue and on Keeney, and the whole site just functions much better than it presently does. This is just an overview of all the way from Kedzie to Keeney that shows the Amley project. And basically this exhibit is there to show you that from Kedzie Avenue all the way to Keeney and on Keeney will be all the new landscape sidewalks. This is just an elevation of, it's interesting, I'll tell you a little story that we've been doing Walgreens for, 30 years or more. And for years we have been saying to them, we really would like more windows. And every time we build, and they've just had an anti-window approach to their retailing. And so here we are 30 years later, and they are waking up to that they need to be more neighborhood friendly and more open and with windows. This property, this is what it will look like. The one on top is the elevation along Chicago Avenue, which will have that higher roof area and that whole glass facade that opens up to the store. The next one down is the north elevation, which faces the small shops. The next one is the east along the alley. And then the south elevation, which is where the driveway is, facing Keeney. This is a store, not this site, but I wanted you to get a feel for what the building looks like. The bottom one over here is our first attempt at a new facade on the retail. We really didn't go any further than that. We're just committing ourselves to a brand new facade on the retail to tie the Amley project to our project. So basically what we're here for tonight, and we appreciate being here and allowing us to be here, that the reason for this is that our property meets and exceeds the minimum area requirement for planned development. The 10-foot transitional landscape strip required where abut residential area is what we're requesting the variation for a 0-foot line there, and based on that that's where our other small shops are now. The walkways are more logical and safe and allows pedestrians to walk along Keeney and walk along Chicago and come from Amley's and with all the new landscaping and concrete work and sidewalk work and trees and plantings. And then the parking, loading, and services areas that we are providing more parking than what's presently on the site and presently required. The loading is a little difficult, but we had a meeting with Walgreens, and I asked permission to say this because I wanted to know how they were going to handle it. They receive a truck only 1 day a week. It's a very large truck. Although coming to the city here, actually their comment was it might not be a very large truck, but they do bring in one delivery a week, and it will be in the alley. Even though our site does have a required loading area near the drive-through, they will be using the alley for this one delivery once a week. The other periodic deliveries through the week, such as maybe milk or groceries or smaller items, are always delivered through their front door at all of their locations. They come in, they park in their own parking lot, they stop, the person brings in his couple of deliveries, comes out and gets back in his truck, and he's on his way. That is how the store is serviced now. That is how I would say 95% of Walgreens are serviced through their front entrance, except for this weekly delivery. So we think with the new circulation, with the new look of the store, it really allows us to freshen up that whole part of the city, along with the wonderful developing that is going on in that area, and that we be part of that activity. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any other testimony from the applicant side?
No, I will say I do have, I meant to say this earlier, is one of the things that we did so that it was friendly to Evanston also is we have hired Tesca Associates, who is doing all the landscaping work, design, as our consultant, so we knew that there wasn't something lost in translation. And so Josh McCarn is here from Tesca if you have any questions later on. We also use Gewalt Hamilton, who has done all of the engineering along Chicago Avenue for the city. Both of these firms have been in my life for 30 years. We've used them many times, and it was a pleasure to find out that that's who was servicing Evanston. So it was an easy decision to add them to our team. So Steve Perez is here from Gewalt if we have any questions. And then from Camburus and Theodore, who also has been in our life a long time and has done a lot of Walgreens. That's almost their specialty of doing it. And from Camburus and Theodore, and John Bradshaw is here. And our property manager, she'll get mad at me if I don't mention it, that Michelle McCartney is here also. So if later on in the evening you do have questions of the specialists on that. One other comment that maybe, I don't know if I went over it or not, is there is some water retention or detention requirements, and that will all be engineered and designed to be underground in holding areas. So I think that's it. And thank you.
Thank you. One quick question that I had for staff before we go to board questions was, am I reading this correctly in the zoning analysis that the required number of parking spaces is 76? It says existing, and it seems like is that the existing number and the required number?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay. All right. Are there any board questions for Mr. Struzner at this time before we go to the public?
Yeah, I have one. What does Walgreens do now as far as their weekly truck, and where does it park?
I'm not sure of that answer, other than I believe it's in the alley. And I don't know if they pull onto our property for some of that or not. Really won't be much different, I don't think, than what's taking place right now.
Rich, I believe it's Rick Marshall's email says that they blocked the alley.
Yeah. So that one delivery a week has been there for 25 years.
I do have one comment. The zoning analysis does say 89 parking spaces, but through small revisions in the plan, adding landscape areas, crosswalks, et cetera, that's down to 83 now.
Okay, so required 76, proposed 83. Seth?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The size of the structure is actually being reduced, correct? I can't find the square footage of the current building.
The reduction is that the Walgreens is actually getting larger. That's why they want to build a
Right.
store. But they're taking the space where the Walgreens and the video store used to exist. So the Walgreens and the video store added up to more square footage than the new Walgreens.
Also, it appears that there's only one entry to the Walgreens, and that's at the north side of the building.
Northwest corner.
And it looks, like a significant walk, from some of those farther parking spaces to get to that that entry. Is there a reason why there's only that one entry?
That entrance, not that we designed it that way, is just about where it is right now. I mean, that's...
Right, but there's no parking along that side of the building.
Right.
Right, which is a long walk too, but you can come through the gangway, which is being eliminated. So I was just wondering, why that design, and is it because that's the way it is now? And just seems like a very inconvenient walk for all these parking spaces, these new, to get to that entry.
Yeah, we can ask John Bradshaw a little about that, although I'll say that I like where it's at because it relates to the small shops, and it forms that L shape right there, and it seemed very appropriate. We did not put it there. That's where Walgreens put it, but I think they find that to be a user-friendly corner.
Another question I have for you is the impact of on the neighborhood during demo and construction. Are there plans to block the alleys and the streets?
I would think the only plans would be no different in Amley or any other project, that we have one wall that will be along that, the east side there, and it is a masonry wall. So I don't know if we'll be putting scaffolding up on the inside and have the masons lean over, which is done a lot on lot line work, or whether they'd want to scaffold in the alley for a short period of time. I would assume they'd coordinate that with the city and get required permits for closure or whatever, or temporary closure.
Well, I do know that the neighbors that are directly behind that on the alley do have an issue with a zero setback. And it seems to me, in addition to their concerns, how long is the building going to be constructed? I'm assuming it's going to be months of demolition and construction.
It's planned to be a 6-month period. And it'll be over.
The concern I would have if I'm a neighbor is the impact on that alley and to get in and out of the garage that they have.
Well, I don't think they'll ever lose access to the use of the alley in its totality, meaning you can't come down that side. It might be narrower while they're doing the masonry on that back wall, no different than Amley is up against or wherever. So, and no different when we built the one-story, retail that's there. These are temporary construction annoyances.
They are. Okay. Thank you.
Another question for Steph. I didn't look at the Amley design before coming here, but do they dump traffic onto the alley? Or
They do not.
they
The
do not. They're
entry,
all off of Chicago.
the entry is
side
off of
street.
Chicago
Okay.
to their parking structure. There's no parking, or I think there's drop-off delivery for move-in in the back, but it's off alley.
But the day-to-day residents are coming off of Chicago Avenue.
You're correct. And I do want to state that I believe Emily is scheduled for completion at end of 2013. So with this and the Walgreens, this entire block would be finished by the end of 2013.
Yeah, that was another thing that Greg and I even talked about at that time, that Craig and I talked about, was instead of doing it in 2012, which was going to be difficult anyway, but by doing it in 2013, the bulk of it's going to happen that summer and then be over with at the same time for both projects.
Mr. Stusner, did you review with Walgreens scenarios in which the Walgreens was pulled off of that lot line and did meet the 10-foot setback, potentially even moving it closer to Chicago and potentially even moving it closer to Keeney Street?
Yeah, we did go through all of those with respect to Keeney and getting the drive-in window, which is critical to them. And then as far as moving forward, they would have to give up a row of parking, and that would put us below our parking count, and we couldn't afford to do that either. So yes, we did approach that. Their staff approached that. Camburus and Theodore looked at that, and there was just no solution.
Specifically, did you look at a scenario where there would be a drive aisle and parking in the north-south drive aisle headed east or up on our screen there, and then parking off of that, so 90-degree parking off of that, and moving the Walgreens forward towards Chicago Avenue and allowing the drive-through to then wrap around the rear of the building? By pulling it forward, basically having, one line of parking and the drive aisle at the front, eliminating those one row of parking spaces, but replacing them as you head towards the back and pulling the Walgreens. So pulling the Walgreens about 18 feet forward and kicking it down to Keeney. Did you review that option?
Well, basically by moving forward, you lose that row of parking that's in front of the store there.
But you could replace it though with the drive aisle to the rear. Did you look at that option?
No, I don't think they would go for having the parking along the alley there. And
Not along the alley, sir, but basically your entrance is
along
in
Keeney, you're talking about then.
No, the entrance is your entrance to Walgreens is at the northwest corner of the Walgreens. Yes. So if you imagine the building moving down and over, you would have basically a whole row of parking along the north side of the building that would replace the parking that would be lost by moving it forward.
I don't think you have enough room to bring this corner. You're saying bring this corner down to here, and then create a passageway through where cars would be in.
Yes, sir.
I don't think you have the room to put a drive in.
I guess, Lori, I have one question for Mr. Mariano. The comprehensive plan, doesn't it encourage retail to be up against a sidewalk to encourage pedestrian interaction? And now with the Amley project, isn't that more desirable?
Certainly in the B districts, that's encouraged in terms of essentially storefronts closer to the lot line near the sidewalk. If you think of Central Street or Dempster or Main, particularly in those traditional business districts. Chicago Avenue is different in terms of its C1A zoning and the fact that over many years it's been more of a car-oriented arterial street. It's changing, certainly, I think, for the good in terms of a lot of healthy residential development, but there still is an allowance for this kind of somewhat strip-oriented retail, nicely done in terms of what's proposed with the Walgreens and the rehab of the existing store. So the comprehensive plan, I think, encourages that, especially in the districts I mentioned. I think Chicago Avenue, particularly this part of Chicago Avenue, has had more of a history of retail development and design that's more car-oriented and does have parking in the front.
I have just a general comment, and then I guess I'll wait to have a direct question to Gowald Hamilton regarding traffic engineering. So I'll just address. It's Mr. Strusner?
Yes.
Good evening. My name's Lenny Asaro, and I live with my family in the courts of Evanston, so I'm just south of your development. So I spend probably first being work, second being home, third being Walgreens are probably the places in order that I spend. And your description of how you, the genesis of the idea to redo this shopping center and the process that you went through and the conclusions that you reached and what you proposed, I think it's outstanding, and I think it's noble on a lot of different points. When I spent enough time going in there and practicing in real estate law and zoning, having the building set back, I think it's, from at least people that I talk to, it's when you're walking down Chicago, to not have that hard corner, which is where the building is right now, is, I think, an important safety issue. As people are walking up and down Chicago, as we do, going to Main Street, trying not to use the car as much. And I think, secondly, if you could clarify, and I should know this, but I'm pretty sure that the existing alley there that runs north-south, that's on the west or east side of the building, that existing alley, the residential buildings there, I don't believe have garages.
Do not.
They do have, all of them have garages, or even the one that's right behind the Walgreens?
Except for the one behind the Walgreens,
Okay.
all of them have some sort of garage structure
Okay.
integrated in with their building.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I wanted to point out is the way that the building is configured now, which is basically being hard on Chicago, at least my experience, I would, in the wintertime, if I had to go to Walgreens, I might park in the back because I felt okay doing it. I can tell you my wife doesn't. Even though it's lit and I feel fine, I feel safe, I think having all of the customer parking oriented in front makes it look like one comprehensive neighborhood shopping center, and I think it also promotes a level of safety. So those are just my personal points. From what I can tell and based on my review of everything, it appears that the facts you presented support, I believe, at least the requirements that we have to review and analyze from the commission of the Plan Commission, at least from my perspective. But I just wanted to compliment you on the hard work that you did, and we would be looking forward to it, I can tell you that much.
I appreciate the comments.
Thanks.
Now, just refresh my memory, don't you have a metal guardrail right at the alley line behind the Walgreens at present?
I believe there is.
Okay, so that
Yeah.
moving your building there isn't putting a different impediment. You've got something there now.
Yes.
Okay.
Plus, the whole row of small shops is on the alley now also. And
Now-
actually, that's where you mentioned where the garages were. I mean, that building exists already.
Okay. Lenny is also a biker, pedal biker, as I am. What are you going to have for bicyclists to lock up their bikes?
We're proposing right in front of the store here. Right, that is where it is? Yeah, a bicycle rack. And from some comments that I read, there should be at least 3 U-shaped, and that's what we would provide. I mean, that's a perfect spot for it. We've tried to create that little plaza area, right in front of the store, and I think that'd be a great place. We, created a walkway from Chicago Avenue through to that little plaza area, That's where the bikes will be. There also is this connector right here. So brings you right to that area, the entrance of the store.
I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question about what you'll be doing with garbage receptacles, trash receptacles. I've noticed that currently the Walgreens has a fairly large
Container.
trash compactor, I'm guessing, back there. What is the plan with the new plan going forward?
Everything is a little give and take, and so when we came up with this plan, we were able to convince Walgreens to do all their trash storage inside the building.
Okay.
So,
They've agreed to do.
so if their trash storage is inside the building, then how does their trash pickup get performed?
The trash pickup, you see where this loading zone is? That's our loading zone along the alley up there. And that's where their door will be on that south elevation. And so they will bring their garbage out once a week or whenever pickup is, onto that loading zone area, and the truck will come and pick up their refuse.
So the garbage truck then will also block the alley for its pickups?
Yes, although it picks up, there's a lot of stuff all along that alley that it comes and gets. Every one of our retail tenants in the small strip, it's sitting in the alley right behind their store. So, but Walgreens will have nothing permanent. They will put it out for the pickup.
I know this is about the Walgreens, but then what happens to, I think one of the emails brought this up as well, what happens to Hunan Springs dumpsters and grease traps?
I have to take a look at that. I don't believe that that is on the property there, but
I'm pretty sure, I happen to live a couple blocks from there. I'm pretty sure currently Hunan Springs, all of their trash and grease dump and all of that is behind the building through the little gangway that is, I'm looking at this plan like the gangway is there, but.
Right to the south end of the wall there, around
Yeah,
the corner.
the southeast corner of the rest of the strip.
Yeah, I read that comment, and it's a good comment, and we're going to, as property managers, we're going to have to take a look at how we control that.
The loading zone, is that a zone or a dock?
A dock.
A dock.
So it's a concrete platform per the regulation in the zoning
Okay.
ordinance.
The height of a truck bed. The height of a truck bed.
Oh, there's nothing above it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
open to the sky.
Okay.
And it's the length of, I think it's about 35 feet.
I believe, sir, I believe it's going to be level with the ground,
Yes.
and that's what you're asking.
Oh, yeah, that was what I was
Yes.
asking.
It's
Level
going
with
to
the
be level
ground.
with the ground
Yeah,
surface.
it's level with the ground, yes. But it could take a step van, they get deliveries and stuff that, a step van can pull out of the alley.
In
and
theory,
sit
you're
there.
supposed to be able to pull into it, but because of the way their site plan is configured, you can't really get the type of truck delivery that they get into the spot. But the theory is that you should be able to fit the actual delivery truck into the loading spot.
Well, the only thing, and now I'll speak as an architect a moment, but you'd have to tell me if the city would allow it. If you do look at the upper right corner there's some landscaping and then the sidewalk. If that became a wider drive, then that truck could back up or even just pull in off of Keeney right into it like any other drive. I think our designers tried to preserve part of the streetscape up to the alley. So
I guess it's not, neither is really all that favorable in general. The fact is that the plan meets the letter of the law without necessarily meeting the intent of the law, which is to actually provide a space for the truck to get off the street or the alley.
I mean, I wonder, oh, I'm off. I'm looking at it and wondering if that 1 day a week delivery could pull, in effect, go backward through the drive-through lane. So that you don't unload in the alley, you unload in the drive-through, backing up to the loading zone.
John, what's your thoughts on that? there is this space right here. I don't know how maneuverable that truck is, and I will say that,
Yeah,
John Bradshaw.
I'm John Bradshaw with Camerson Theodore. I'm the architect working with Rick. And I'll probably eventually defer to Steve, who's with Gewalt Hamilton, probably knows a little bit more about the geometrics, but I think our approach was to maintain as much of the landscaping as we could. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I think circulating a truck in that drive-through area was going to be a detriment in a couple of ways. One, you might either destroy landscaping or you're going to get rid of landscaping in order to have it maneuver. And also you have the interaction with the drive-through itself, meaning the awning, which is covering the drive-through window, and also the cars that would might line up there. And I guess the truck wouldn't deliver when there's cars there, but otherwise there were a myriad of conflicts that we were trying to avoid. And the cleanest way to do that was the way we propose here.
Thanks, John.
While the architect is at the podium, let me ask a question.
Okay.
I think the storage of garbage and grease traps in the alley for the restaurant is probably unacceptable and violates city code. Is there a way that with this plan, the grease traps, dumpsters for the small stores won't be in the alley?
And I may defer to
I know it's
Rick on
hard
this.
to design on the fly, but
Well, no, I think in this case, my confines are the Walgreens for the most part. I'm going to work with Rick on helping him on the face of the existing retail, but Rick, I'll have to
Yeah, no,
forward to you.
that's no problem, John. I don't see any change to the small shops. I mean,
well, if the grease traps and the garbage are in the pass-through between the two buildings, when you put the buildings next to each other, you won't be able to keep the garbage and the grease trap between the two buildings. There'll be a wall.
yeah,
That's the change that I'm concerned about.
I actually visited the site today, and while there are a couple dumpsters in the location we're discussing, there also were grease traps and garbage cans all along the retail corridor there as well. So I don't know if it's a matter, and also in our other alley locations where retail is, those cans are located within the alley as well. But we will also check city code concerning that.
Okay, that was going to be my next question was, is it just because something is doesn't mean it's okay? So we don't know, though, whether or not it's okay for the grease traps to be on the alley property. We'll have to figure that out.
Correct.
Okay. Maybe hear from traffic unless anything has something pressing right now. I think, did you say Gewalt Hamilton did your traffic study?
yes. Would you like him to?
Yes, please.
Steve, why don't you answer whatever?
Good evening. Steve Perez with Gewalt Hamilton Associates, traffic and civil engineer for the project.
You said Merez?
Perez.
Torres, do you, in terms of, just to go back to the loading question that we were just talking about, I understand that Walgreens uses pretty big trucks, so the maneuver we were just talking about is probably not all that likely, but do you believe that Keeney Street is wide enough that if there was an opportunity to back straight into the property, off of Keeney Street, that would be an option? So
Possibly if that northern or eastern little green strip at the far top right of the site plan.
Not that that's ideal, I'm just trying to understand.
I think if that was concrete within the parkway
Yeah,
there.
if there was a concrete strip basically that went from the, from the street back, do you think they're kind of, because I think they use semis.
Right. I think the possibilities there. I think there would be still concerns about overlap into the street with the front of the truck.
Okay.
And also definitely, for sure, overlap over the public sidewalk at that time.
Okay.
The truck was there. But I think physically, it would
Actually,
go
that's
back.
probably the biggest thing. It's 35 feet, and the trailer portion could be
Right.
35 feet.
Right.
And
So really,
yeah.
in either case, no matter what, then it's probably overlapping the pedestrian passage, because even if they're parked in the alley, they're going to park the back of the truck far enough. They're not going to park the back of the truck past the doorway. They're going to make it so they can open the truck and come down and go inside. So either way, they're probably.
I'm not certain of Walgreens operations,
Okay.
but I believe that may not be the case.
Okay.
I believe the truck could be pulling and face north, and the back of the truck would be close to in line
Okay.
with the rear of the building. And the pedestrian wouldn't be impacted, that would still be open, and there would still be a bypass lane in the alley to get by the truck for all cars.
Well,
That would
why
be
does that
widened.
alley?
20 feet, plus 20 feet in the public area alley, plus actually where the property's fronted on the east side, there's actually a little more pavement that is private property, but within the public alley, there would still be about 10 feet of a bypass lane for a single car to get by.
Okay.
I
and
believe.
I believe there were some other questions for traffic.
Yeah, I just have a question about, with regards to this slide, on Keeney, the driveway that is the furthest east, so on the top right-hand corner of the slide?
Right.
Okay. Right now, the driveways that you have along Keeney, they're not necessarily exactly in the same location that you see there. But the driveway that's a little further east at the top right, that particular driveway right now, you probably notice that it's not at street grade, at the grade level.
Right.
So when cars come down, they basically either have to go really, really slow, or they can just go right through it and deal with the consequences later. So I don't know if that's something that can be remedied through traffic engineering. It just may be just the natural gradation of the area. But can you speak to that?
Well, we would definitely, if this project moves forward, we would refine the final grading and ensure that we minimize that effect. And we already recognize that on the front end and thought of ideas, and I believe that it would be accomplishable and be an improvement from the existing conditions.
Because it's significant enough that at least, when I go through the drive-through, I come down, I basically am just crawling. But the other driveway, that's actually the driveway to the west, so that one, thank you, Mr. That one actually is, you can pull in pretty easily. But
And I would envision the usage of that far eastern access will reduce in the site plan because it will only drive-through traffic. The on-site circulation is much, much improved for this site. And we believe it's a much safer plan for both pedestrians and vehicle use and fits for the existing site very well.
That drive will actually, the eastern drive will be exiting from the drive-through only.
That's it, correct.
Yeah.
Both western drives have the same, from the existing plaza, have the same issues of being my sob.
Right.
Hits that front bumper, even when you go slow.
We will improve it on site as best we can to minimize what you will come, the breakover slope is what they call it. We'll do the best we can.
Actually, I'll say one thing is, and I don't know if we could do this or not, but when we study that, where the entrance is on the northwest corner there, that might become what I would call 0-0, and we might put that in an area that is low enough then that actually we can get a few more inches down in the back, and it might be below 0-0 by a few inches by the time you get to that back corner. I'm talking about inside the store, so therefore a person standing at the window and a person in the car can relate, but yet get that back corner down a drop so that problem doesn't exist.
Did you do a study of both for existing and proposed traffic generation counts? I didn't see that in my report.
We weren't required to do a full traffic impact study. We were required to do a traffic analysis and summary of what we thought. We projected what the usage would be for the drive-through and the overall concept of how the site would interact. The total space is down with the total square footage for the whole center.
You know, it's an existing tenant that whatever traffic they have, you know, that's the traffic, and we're eliminating one store.
Right.
I think my concern is just in terms of, is not so much in terms of the overall counts, but in terms of where you've moved the counts to, where they might exist currently and where they're kind of moving to, because obviously with the way you are reconfiguring it, the counts going towards Keeney Street are going to be vastly different than they are right now, correct?
Yes, I believe the overall generation for the site will be slightly less than what it is today, and the traffic generation will be on Chicago Avenue, which is the arterial street. More of the traffic shift will lead to that. We're improving the north access to the site, requesting a full access. Right now, it could be that, but it's signed right in, right out. We're creating a better entrance in the middle of the site, and we're going to encourage flow to come in off of Chicago Avenue, which is the arterial street.
And I think actually we've taken the traffic away from the east end, which is more into the residential neighborhood. There is no driveways there other than exiting from the, you know, from the drive-through.
One of the things that I think is really significant about the revised plan is how close the new proposed driveway is to the intersection of Keeney and Chicago, and I think we all know that having an entrance or an exit drive close to an intersection is closer to an intersection is less desirable. I think you would agree with the general concept of that, at least. So I was hoping that you could speak further to the fact that not only are we moving the entrance and exit closer, but we aren't restricting that to a right out only. And while there's this idea that drive-through traffic, you know, comes up through the center of the site and goes in front of the Walgreens, I don't know how accurate that is, and could definitely see more traffic trying to turn off a Keeney and make their way through from that direction. So maybe you could speak further to your thoughts on that in terms of the fact that we are moving much closer and having a fully open intersection there.
Right. I still expect the bulk of the traffic that's on Chicago Avenue to use the center access. During non-peak hours, they may tend to use the path of least resistance.
Seth?
Yeah. I tend to think traffic is going to increase into this site for two reasons. A new store, people avoid that Walgreens, at least people that I know, because it is difficult to park. You are increasing the parking space, so it's going to be a much more inviting store to visit. You're increasing parking to the whole shopping plaza. I frequent that plaza quite often, and anybody who lives in Evanston that does knows how difficult it is to park in that parking lot. So you're increasing space, at least on the front. Yes, you can park in back, understand that, but it's going to be more attractive to people to park. So I think you're actually going to increase traffic, both because, again, you have extra parking in the front, and you have a much nicer store to shop in. I too think that traffic is going to increase entering from the south through that side entrance to avoid the actual, I would consider a nightmare of entering in the center of that lot to turn right into that parking space, because we know what that lot feels like today. I don't see that by increasing capacity to the right there, enabling that driveway of entry to be more efficient. I think it's going to become less efficient. I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm just a guy that drives and uses that parking lot, but that's my opinion. So I agree with you.
Thank you.
Maybe you can address that by talking about the existing experience and stacking and how many cars are lined up for the window at various times, if you have that information.
For the existing store?
Right.
I do not have the existing store. We would expect the stacking for the drive-through for the new store to be a maximum of 3 to 4 cars during the peak time. And they have that permitted, or they have that room for the cars to stack on site in the drive-through area. Do you know how the existing store operates?
Yeah, no,
Are there any other questions for the traffic engineer at this time?
Thank you.
Are there any other overall questions maybe before we go to public comment?
Let me ask Mr. Strassner. The only thing I can see about hardship is on the application, and it says the ownership would suffer hardship if the regulations were not obtained due to not being able to accommodate Walgreens site plan and redevelopment. Could you talk a little bit about the hardship standard for the variation that's sought?
You know, I've been doing this for 40 years, and I've always wondered about that part of that shows up in every zoning book in every city and village we build in. And this word hardship, you know, when a person wants to add a third garage and come into their front yard, because it'll be a hardship if they don't have a place for their 3 cars. I think what we were trying to say there is that we think this is a desirable change for the site. And so there's an overall hardship that if we can't accommodate the changes that are needed for it, that it'll have to remain the same. And I know these 2 boards are not concerned about finances, but I'll make the comment that financially, we'd be better off leaving it alone. So it's almost the reverse. There is no hardship on our part if we don't build this project. In other words, we own it, it's a property, we have a long-term lease. All we were trying to do is improve the neighborhood. So I can't answer the word hardship in a way that meets the ordinance.
Asking differently.
Yeah.
You've now testified to the standard that it's not solely for the purpose of making more money.
Yes.
One of the...
Actually, it's going to cost us a lot of money.
One of the constraints to moving the building is the parking between the building, the first row of parking against the building, between the building and the street. One of the commissioners has commented that there wasn't enough parking. Can you address the need for those additional parking spaces, which are in front of the building, requiring the building to be set back toward the alley? I mean, if you moved it forward, you'd lose spaces.
Yes.
I could count them on the plan.
We lose whatever 20 spaces.
So has Walgreens given you any information suggesting the need for the spaces? I, too, often have gone to that site and found the parking filled. But maybe Walgreens or one of your experts has some information about why you need the parking spaces.
Well, I think in this instance, Walgreens would have a big concern about that they don't consider the parking to the north of the building available to their customer, and that this parking lot would afford the number. They're usually looking for like about 40 spaces just for the store. I think we don't have anywhere near that in this south or this west parking lot here, but I don't think they'd move forward if they didn't have at least this field of parking.
Mr. Galloway?
I'm curious as to the genesis of this 10-foot setback when properties of such zoning are adjacent to residential properties. And one thing that I found sort of interesting was there was the mention of a landscape strip. So I would presume then that this 10 feet would be utilized as a landscape strip buffer between a property of this zoning and residential. Well, it sounds to me like that's addressing a condition which doesn't exist here, such that the portion of the residential property might be the front or a highly accessed side of, say, townhomes or single-family residences here. So
I saw that.
I'm wondering if this isn't a sort of a stretch.
Yeah, I saw that comment about a landscape strip in their presentation. However, I don't recall that being an actual requirement. I think their requirement is just for the 10 feet, not that it be landscaped. Could staff confirm that?
Well, what would the purpose of it be? Just so that, in other words, I think I'm going to make this up as I go for a moment because I've built in every community around. Usually that 10 feet is when a property line touches a property line, and they want you, and they don't want the commercial up against a residential property line, and therefore this is a very suburban ordinance type of thing that they want to be sure you're 10 feet away from that property line so that, the wall of the residential isn't blocked. In this case, we have an alley that creates 20 feet. The only purpose that extra 10 feet would be is that it's now 30 feet. And then when we talked to neighbors at the open house that we had there, we actually talked to several, that the only thing that is on those walls is maybe a second or third bedroom. All of the living rooms and living areas look to their courtyard.
My recollection is that in 1992, people came to the hearing on the new ordinance and talked about commercial adjacent to residential. And I don't believe anyone contemplated, or at least from the testimony, and it's a long time ago to remember, that people thought about how this would apply next to an alley. But there was some concern where the commercial and the residential lot lines abutted up against each other.
It does seem to me, though, that it does solve some of these other problems that we're talking about in terms of, it's one thing for a business to be backed up to a business and dealing with, business trash and business loading and that sort of thing. It's expected when you're backing up to another business that everybody's doing the same thing and that sort of thing, just like a residence backing up to a residence. Everybody's doing the same sort of thing with the alley, whereas in this case, not everybody's doing the same sort of thing with the alley. So it may have been, I don't know, but to me it makes sense in the sense that it does offer, relief for some of those types of things to happen. Maybe if we could go to Craig really quick, and then I know the other boards have more comments.
At everybody's seat tonight, I did provide you a 5-page sheet of all the standards for a special use and plan development. If you look at page 4, item A, all boundaries of the plan development immediately abutting a residential property.
I did not get that.
I'll make sure you get one. Must provide a transition landscape of at least 10 feet. So it's abutting a residential property. It's not abutting an alley of a resident that abuts a residential property. It's when they both share a property line.
Let me ask one other question. Would Walgreens be amenable to a condition restricting the deliveries at night during sleeping hours?
So that it wouldn't occur then?
Right.
Oh, that would not be a problem at all. These deliveries probably come early in the morning. They absolutely would agree to an hour restriction, to not happen after 6 o'clock at night, to not happen before 7 in the morning. that would not be a, I'm not sure if the numbers I just recited that are on record right now, but I'm saying that to keep them to a certain window. We had a very favorable, I brought up all these issues in our meeting with them. And, you know, obviously they'd like to have this new store, and they want to be as neighborly, you know, as possible. And that's why they even agreed to do the trash indoors for them. You know, in a way, we're go ahead.
Sorry, no, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
just gonna, I know we've got quite a few people coming down the way, so we'll start at the end, Mr. Opdyke.
Okay, what's the setback for Amley? 5 feet, maybe? The setback for Amley?
I believe it's 10.
10 feet?
Okay.
I know we had a big go-around with that a couple of years ago.
Go to that.
But you move to that slide. Thank you. It's at least a 10-foot setback.
Is that all, not that I'm worried about it that much, but is that am I seeing a landscape setback too?
Yeah, I think you are.
I'm not uniquely familiar with Amley, unfortunately.
Okay.
Is that landscaping along the alley of Tuscus? Yes.
Okay. Moving on down, was it Mr. Galloway? Did you have somebody else I saw?
I have a question.
Mr. Ford?
What is the difference in height between the new Walgreens and the existing retail? Roughly. Is it twice as high?
Well, I'm going to let you. What is the height of the new building overall? The highest point?
Well, I'm thinking the highest. I'm talking the alley line.
Yeah, which is, we'll just call it the average parapet height then, yes. So along the alley, we're about 25 feet.
And we're probably 16 feet or 17 feet along our gutter line along there, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's probably 8 to 10 feet higher.
Mr. Ream?
Yeah, I have a question back on parking. So the new additional parking, is that available to all shoppers, or is that going to be restricted to Walgreens parking only?
There is no restriction.
No restriction. Thank you.
Anything further before we go to?
And I think Walgreens has a requirement that there'll be 2 or 3 electric stations. They're doing that at all their stores now. So there will be 2 or 3 electric stations there also.
One would be nice.
Anything further before we go to public comment?
Do they allow charging overnight at those electric stations?
Actually, I have just a couple questions because
Matt.
it's a special use. We go through our typical special use
Thank you.
questions. We've already addressed garbage collection. The city has a litter pickup plan, which you probably are familiar with, that you are responsible for policing any property within 250 feet of your property and collecting any garbage, whether it be from your location or not, just to keep the area clean. Are you familiar with this plan?
I'm not familiar with it, but you know, we work very hard at keeping our whole property very clean, and we would certainly abide by that if we were told to do that.
Okay.
If I could jump in, you need to keep in mind that the special use that the zoning board is looking at is specifically for the drive-through, not for the entire development.
But it is a special use nonetheless.
Right, but the standards that you'll be looking at will be specific only to the drive-through. So if you're considering a litter pickup plan, that would be in relation to how the drive-through might have litter rather than the entire Walgreens or the entire development.
Right. But it's nice to be able to sneak in, since lots of people don't have to do the litter pickup plan, that when they have to come before us, we can inform them of it. And secondly, where do employees of the buildings currently, of the Walgreens currently park? Do you know?
In the lot, we try very hard to get them to park along Chicago Avenue. It's a constant chore to tell them, but that's what we will try to get them to use those spaces. We catch people in all of our centers. They pull up right in front of their own store. I can't believe that they'll use their parking space for themselves versus a customer, but that's just a constant chore that we have. Okay. But we try to get them to park as far away as possible, which in this case would be Chicago Avenue.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, anything else before we go to public comment?
Nope.
All right.
Thank you.
We have a list, or are we just gonna, we can go in order?
Hey, can you get the list of the,
I'll leave this up in case anyone wants to refer to it.
Thank you.
While he's getting the list, I have one more question for Melissa. Do we have there been any complaints on the property currently, any zoning violations, any sort of?
None that have come through the zoning office specifically. I wouldn't be aware of anything that would go through property standards or anything like that.
But you've not heard of anything?
Nothing that
coming through?
I'm aware of.
All right, thank you.
Oh, okay, so it's just this. Okay. All right, first on my list, I have Alex Sproul. And sir, were you sworn in at the beginning?
I didn't swear, no.
Anyone from the public who wishes to speak, if you were not sworn in at the beginning, if I could have you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you very much. And again, if you could state your name and address.
I'm Alex Sproul, and I live at 646 Judson. And I don't know if I'm within 500 feet of this or not, but it's certainly close enough for us to use that place all the time. We're over into that South Point Plaza several times a week. I have two questions. Well, first, I'd like to say that I haven't heard anything tonight that would dissuade me from thinking that this is a wonderful project, and I very much hope it goes through. To get a new store and to relieve the parking problem is a major advance. The two questions that I have, one, I walk up Keeney to get to this place, and am I going to have to cross vehicular traffic to get into the Walgreens?
Yes,
you are, sir. Just the drive-through traffic?
Yeah, the drive-through exit and then the drive-through entrance would have to be crossed.
Would there be an extension of that sidewalk across the green spot there? Oh, excuse me, the sidewalk is on the inside of that.
Yes, sir.
So, so that would not appear to be a major problem. The other question is, does this project, would it be governed by the Green Building Ordinance, which was relaxed somewhat a year or two ago?
I do not believe it is, but staff can confirm for us.
And if not, would you consider LEED certification?
I can answer that real quick.
Okay.
The City of Evanston GBO requires any development over 20,000 square feet to be LEED Silver certified. Anything under requires 5 of 8 items from a checklist that we provide to the developer. The developer has also discussed Walgreens does everything up to about a LEED Silver compliance in their buildings already.
Okay, so they will have to do
comply.
5 items from the city's green checklist.
Right. Much akin to what the Gordon Food Service just went through that's being built on Oakton right now.
Okay. And when we're done, we will come back around to the applicant, and they can answer further any of their intentions.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear it.
And is it Nick Marshall? Rick? Please state your name and address, sir.
Sure. My name is Rick Marshall. I live at 700 Hinman Avenue, and I wrote comments that I believe you all have. I'd like to just clarify a few things that have been said in the testimony thus far, as well as a couple of additional comments. First, the deliveries to the Walgreens store today are not in the alley. They are in the back parking area to a loading dock, which is on the back wall of the existing building. So today, deliveries to Walgreens do not block the alley. Deliveries to the smaller retail stores that are also part of the plaza do block the alley when they happen. I can't confirm whether only one truck comes to deliver to Walgreens a week. I have seen them frequently in the 20 years I've lived in the building. I do know that there are other trucks that deliver to the Walgreens in the back of the building. For example, Dean's Milk delivers milk to the store at the back of the building. And if the expanded Walgreens, which we'd like to see, subject to your deliberations, encompasses additional grocery goods, we would have a concern that there would be perhaps more trucks coming to the property. The comments I made relative to the garbage dumpster and grease bin for the Chinese restaurant. The grease bin, to clarify, is on the back of the property. Our concern with that is more the rodent problem than its location. The dumpster, which is an oversized dumpster, does sit on the concrete pad off the alley in the existing parking area behind the store. So that would have to go somewhere with this current design. The intersection of Chicago Avenue and Keeney does not have a stoplight. To make a turn from Keeney onto Chicago Avenue to go south today is somewhat of an adventure, principally because the grade of Keeney is looking up at the L tracks. So you have to pull forward quite a way to look beyond the parking on the east side of Chicago Avenue in front of the townhomes to the south to make the turn. So one additional concern perhaps you should have is if there's additional traffic exiting that exit right near Chicago Avenue and trying to go south, you may have potential for increased accidents. The width of the alley today along the back wall that is at the 0 feet setback, from my perspective, has been fine in the 20 years I've lived in the property immediately behind it. We can get in our garage, but if there were a small garbage dumpster from one of the other stores slightly located differently, we'd have a difficulty making a turn to get it down into the garage. Not a problem, and has not been thus far. I think that covers additional comments I have. Thank you.
Were there any questions for Mr. Marshall? Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
That's the end of our list. Was there anyone else who wished to speak to us or ask any questions of the applicant at this time from the public? Okay, seeing none. Going to go back to the board and see if that, sorry, sir, I'm going to let you respond to, did you have any responses to any of the comments made by the public?
Well, the only response I'll make is to the Keeney. I think we're all creatures of habit, and I think, if you study I think the majority of traffic comes from the north on Chicago and from the south on Chicago, and I think very few people are going to turn on to Keeney in order then to make a left turn back in. That with the enhancement of our two entrances, and that was the suggestion of Gewalt Hamilton, to enhance those entrances so they weren't just right in or right out and that they were full entrances, I think traffic definitely will be using that. The problem with closing off Keeney would purely be the dead end of it all, and you'd end up with more of a traffic jam of people trying to get in and out. So you're going to have some people leaving and some people learning that they're better off heading the other way. I think the beauty of this plan actually is Keeney is becoming less important to the center, which I think for commercial traffic makes a lot of sense.
Are there any other questions from the board for the applicant or any of the witnesses at this time, sir?
So it was addressed with regards to exiting the shopping center off of Keeney. So if you're parked right in front of the Walgreens there, if you decided to exit Keeney and you wanted to go back south, you'd exit Keeney, you'd traverse the eastbound or westbound traffic on Keeney, or I'm sorry, you get in the right-hand lane and then you make that left-hand turn to get around. So that's one way to go south. The other, and then vehicles could also make the left-hand onto Keeney and then make a right to go back on Chicago. I agree with, I couldn't agree more. Your last name? Mr. Marshall, that left-hand turn, and that's not your fault.
No, let me say one thing
go ahead.
that might be helpful to you with your comment, because I have the drawing here. That the one thing...
Sir, if you could just make sure you...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
The
get
one
the
thing
mic.
that has been difficult in the existing center is that we used, in order to, 25 years ago, satisfy whatever parking up front there, the diagonal parking allowed you to have a narrower aisle. And because this is 90-degree parking, we have a full 24-foot aisle there. And so your maneuverability in that new south addition to be able to pull out of a parking lot and go north and go to the other two exits is going to be very tempting. And it won't take long to learn that that's how you probably should go. Now, somebody who wants to just go out, take a quick right turn, and then a right turn and go north on Chicago, that'll be a no-brainer.
I'm glad you made that point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's give and take either way, and I think adjusting to the plan, I mean, you only have so much land to work with. So you kind of have to... Yeah, it does.
I think Mr. Steele down at the end.
Yeah, Mr. Marshall also stated that if the current location of the trash enclosures were to be relocated, then it would be cumbersome for the people in the adjacent building to make it to their parking, to their garages. Do you have any intention of actually making any changes?
As far as the small shop line goes, we have no intention of changing, and we have no intention of them being anywhere other than where they are. And I think it would be Michelle's responsibility that she's out there all the time inspecting, and we have other staff people there, that they stay parallel with the back of the building and tight to the building, which is the way I always find it there. And we do have our staff clean back there all the time to keep it clean. So I think the way it's been used for 25 years, we will restrict it to keep using it that way, you know, and mainly keeping the dumpsters parallel. And I think maybe because of that, we also, another restriction that I don't think anybody thought about, but we use, I think, about a 4-yard container there. There's no big roll-off containers that are put there, other than maybe when there's a contractor working. But the normal garbage containers are the standard ones that, you know, you just lift up the cover and it's there. So we could restrict the size of those, which we do. And so I don't see any change taking place other than what's happened over the last 25 years.
Mr. Ford?
I understood you to say that that where you have diagonal parking, you have a narrower through lane. Yes. My question would be then, in the new parking area in front of the Walgreens, how many spaces would you lose if you shifted that to diagonal parking, and how many feet would you save that would allow you to pull the store forward?
It's a great comment. I didn't see that coming, but it is a good comment. That the 24 would shrink to 16. I don't care what the solution is. I'm here to work with everybody. So just all we want to know is when you have 60-degree parking, what do you pick up? That's your question.
And
versus 90-degree parking.
How many spaces
and
would you
then
lose?
would we lose 5 spaces or 6 spaces? But let's stay first with, do we gain footage? So do you know offhand what 60-degree parking an aisle is for that?
The aisle width would probably reduce by 4 feet, give or take, to 60-degree parking in a 4-foot range. And once you go to angled parking, you're going to lose what I would consider a substantial amount for this site. I would venture to say you would lose at least 6, maybe 8 for the parking directly in front of Walgreens when you take in both parking bays. It becomes very inefficient quick. 90-degree parking is so much more efficient than any other layout when you can have one bay of parking, which this has. By far the most efficient.
The other thing that would do, that would force everybody in that front to exit onto Keeney.
Right.
If your diagonal is going.
Sure, it could be a diagonal entrance, although I can't imagine that many people wanting to go back towards that center hodgepodge. Any other questions right now? I don't know exactly how we want to handle this, so I'm going to throw out what is going through my mind at this very point, and you all can voice in however you... Sure.
If you are comfortable, if you are comfortable, you have enough testimony to address the standards, then we can close testimony. The Plan Commission will go into recess and either sit silently or stretch out of the room or both while you deliberate. Then there'll be a short recess and we'll reconvene the Plan Commission to deliberate on the planned unit development standards.
Well, I know this will go much to the chagrin of several, but I'm concerned about getting to the bottom of some of the issues in terms of what's going on in the back there and what's allowed for trash, because I think that deeply impacts how necessary that 10-foot setback is.
Can I make a suggestion for some special conditions?
I don't know that works at this point, because I don't feel that the applicant has really thought this issue through at all.
Mine would be consistent with their testimony.
But I don't think they've thought it through, so I don't think there's any testimony to be consistent with, because they haven't come up with a solution. So I haven't heard.
I'll wait till.
Yeah, I haven't heard a solution.
Till we're looking
so
at the
I
plan
think
unit
that
development.
certainly impacts the necessity and the impact of that 10-foot setback along the rear of the property. I've certainly heard testimony in terms of the drive-through and the traffic, and I think I've stated some of my concerns regarding that. But I would.
Is the testimony still open?
Testimony is still open. In fact, I haven't even gone to the applicant for his final closing, but I wanted to sort of state where my mind was right now, and so I will really quickly. What, Seth? Did you have something?
I was wondering if I could ask Craig a question.
Sure.
The 10-foot setback isn't there for, correct me if I'm wrong, I probably only read the ordinance once and briefly, but it's not there for garbage cans, correct? And that it is standard for the garbage cans or receptacles to be in the alley. Is that correct? So what is happening, and it has happened for 25 years along the current shopping strip there, is acceptable and meets zoning requirements. Is that correct?
Well, what I heard was, and correct,
I'm
yeah, that's what I'm saying. What I heard was that's what they've been doing, but we don't know if it's acceptable.
I'm asking Craig on that.
If I could jump in, I have a few more years with a lot of neighborhoods in Evanston. And
Dennis, could you identify yourself?
Yes, Dennis Moreno, Manager of Planning and Zoning for the city. Clearly, the situation Mr. Freeman describes exists throughout the city, both in business districts and residential districts, including single-family areas where the garbage cans and the recycling cans are in the back alley. And so the setback's purpose is not for garbage containers. Could it be used for that? Of course. It could be. And in this case, this issue is where it's abutting residential. There's the 10-foot setback in the zoning ordinance required, subject to variation, certainly. But you also, in this case, have a 20-foot wide alley in that regard. I think we have an existing condition that's existed for 25 years with the existing Strips shopping center. And yeah, obviously the comments about the grease pit, the grease containers, we get that throughout the city, wherever there are restaurants, whether it's Central Street, Main Street, Howard Street, or this area. But we haven't had specific complaints and property standards about this particular shopping center. So I think it's workable to still have the garbage in the alley, the containers in the alley for the small shops. We pushed pretty hard with the applicant, didn't have to push very hard. He was very amenable to talking with Walgreens, lobbying Walgreens to get them to put their stuff inside. So I think that for the new construction, that's being addressed, and that's really what we're here for.
And the only thing that's changing then is that the Chinese restaurant would be moving their dumpsters into the alley.
Their dumpster.
Well, the testimony that I've heard is that the dumpster is currently off the alley behind the Walgreens, or in the corner where the...
Michelle McCartney, the property manager. Yes, I do know where it is. It is...
could you please state your name?
Michelle McCartney. I'm the property manager.
Okay.
Currently, the dumpster is in the rear, right behind the building along the alley, and so is their grease trap. It's behind the restaurant.
Not to the south of the building.
No.
Would Walgreens...
Thinks it is, so we'd have to investigate.
Let me ask if Walgreens and the property owner would find a restriction acceptable that the dumpsters be located so as not to prevent people from entering their garages on the east side of the alley.
That is absolutely not a problem.
Sorry, what page are you looking at? Review.
The first picture.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's actually, there is a trash container there through that gangway. I'm just not sure whose that is.
I think that's the one across the alley.
Yeah,
Because if you
yeah.
look at how it's facing into the alley.
Yeah, I think that's the one across the alley. To the right of that is the back of another trash container, which I think is the Walgreens one. So before I go over, I'm going to turn to the zoning board members and just get a feel for where you guys are at in terms of the testimony you've heard, and if you feel that there's any lacking information from staff or the applicant at this point.
I'm fine to go through the standards.
Okay.
Fine as well.
Agreed.
Before we close testimony, let me ask the Plan Commission members if they are satisfied with the testimony and that they have enough information to address the standards that they will need to address for the planned unit development.
Yes.
Okay. Then if the applicant would like to summarize before we close the record.
Yes. Well, one, we're excited for this change, and we appreciate you allowing us to come before you. I would like to talk about the two things that seem to close the session, because as I sit here and think about it, because I try to be a very good listener, and I try to then accommodate. The building of the Walgreens does not change the use of the alley from the standpoint of garbage. In other words, we have 15 tenants lined up along there. For 25 years, they've each had their dumpster behind their space. If there is one dumpster or one grease container that has been moved onto the concrete at the south end of our building, then it's only appropriate that it should be behind their store along the alley like everybody else. And that is the condition that was talked about. But the tearing down and rebuilding of this store along the alley line does not, and by getting Walgreens to agree to keep all of theirs indoors, that this development, which we're here for, does not impact the alley any more adversely than it has been at all. The actual development, it's not going to change what's out there in any way. The other comment about the parking, and I got excited for a moment about the angle parking, and maybe we could pick up some footage, and it actually was an interesting thought. But the truth is we've lived for 25 years with a very tight parking lot. And the idea of having narrower aisles with angle parking, I'm not sure really works that great. It's a very difficult parking lot. And that going to a standard, what we would do everywhere, a 24-foot aisle with 18-foot deep parking spaces, I think makes a lot of sense and becomes a very user-friendly spot. And if we're not going to gain the whole 10 feet, if we're just going to gain 3 or 4 feet, then I'm not sure what we really gain. Because, again, going back to my first comment, I don't think Walgreens, the building, affects the alley in any way. And so I think that's the way I would like the two boards to think about it, is that we're here to rebuild a Walgreens. And is Walgreens creating any problem different than what exists? And they are not. Thanks.
Actually, Mr. Schuster, sorry, I forgot this question after Mr. Marshall spoke. He brought up a question indirectly. Many at Walgreens are moving towards introducing more of like a market sort of fresh food side to their locations. Do you expect a change in goods and therefore a change in traffic created by that?
The answer I'll give to that, because we had a very good meeting with them, their answer is they're very used to being in dense urban areas, and that other than that weekly delivery that they talked about, that they accept all of their deliveries in their parking lot. And so if Dean Milk, if Jay's Potato Chips, if they all have that 15-minute stop that they deliver, then they just pull up into that 24-foot aisle there, off to a side, and bring in their delivery. And that's it. They will do that. In other words, if there's a concern, will they be in the alley? They will have no problem of being restricted not to be in the alley. That's how they service their stores.
Right. So the expectation, though, would be then that they would be sitting in that.
Right. They restrict the size of the trucks that make those type of deliveries and the frequency, and therefore they would just pull into that 24-foot aisle space, pull over tight to one side, run in with their delivery, and be on their way. That is how it was explained to us. They have no intent of using the alley for those deliveries. That's how they service more urban locations.
But do you expect a change in goods that would further impact the traffic through the site, in that kind of drive-through path that we're talking about?
I don't think so. They have quite a food array right now in their stores. So I don't see that part growing. But now I cannot speak for Walgreens. Every retailer questions their existence every day. So I don't know. But I don't see that being a problem.
Thank you.
Or a change.
All right.
Okay.
If there's nothing further, then we're going to close the record on this case. Mr. Optek?
I think this is a wonderful, wonderful project from top to bottom, and I congratulate South Point and Walgreens for taking this on. They didn't have to do it, but they're doing it at some considerable expense. It will be a very welcome improvement to the Chicago Avenue corridor.
Anything else before we close the record? Begin our deliberations? Okay, with that, we're going to close the record on this case, and the Zoning Board of Appeals will begin our deliberations with regard to the special use and the proposed major variance for the 10-foot setback.
Plan Commission is in recess until they're finished with deliberations.
Is there any, I guess we'll wait for them to. Yeah.
Does that mean we have to leave?
No.
You don't have to leave.
You're welcome to stay.
You're very welcome, actually.
In
to
recess right here.
Listen.
Stay in a nice warm room.
As I'm.
They are required to come.
Our comments may impact your thoughts. So, is there discussion from the zoning members before we run through the standards?
I would say that, overall, I think the plan is very well thought out. My biggest concern was what they were going to do with garbage collection, but it appears that will all be done within the confines of the footprint of the store. The only existing concerns I have regard deliveries and where various delivery trucks will be, but that's something that I think with special considerations being added to our recommendation to council, we can address any of those issues.
Anything else from the members? I just generally, before we do run through the standards, I would say that I do think it's a great opportunity that that the center and Walgreens is taking up to pursue this, and I think that it certainly helps to improve the appearance and certainly the welcoming feel of the shopping center as a whole. And I do expect that a revision to the shopping center would dramatically increase traffic to that location, because it's actually probably even the closest location to me, and I don't go to it. I go to another one. So that being said, I think I have generally voiced, but some concerns about the way the site is currently laid out. I think the traffic generation hugging Keeney Street the way it is for the drive-through is problematic for me, and I think that there are other options for both the setback and the drive-through that way maybe weren't fully vetted. So I do have concerns that linger on those issues, but we'll go through the standards.
Actually, that kind of made me think of one more comment that I have. It's anecdotal, of course, but that's been my Walgreens since we've lived there, so 5 years, and through the birth of 3 children, which has caused me to have to go to that drive-through pharmacy a lot, surprising amount. And I have to say, I've been there at all hours on all days, and I've never seen it stacked more than 3, never. And it's always been amazing to me if it's been 3. So I'm not so concerned with the location of the drive-through. I'm a little concerned about, I guess there wasn't really any other way to do it, but I'm a little concerned about the setback from Chicago. But I do think overall it sounds like it's a great project, and if it's going to be anything like the sort of new Walgreens, like the one down on State Street in the city, I think that's actually pretty exciting for Evanston. So,
I would agree with you both. It's great that we're making these improvements are forthcoming. However, purely opinion, it's disappointing to see cookie cutter designs. I know it's a big step for Walgreens to embrace this new aesthetic, but I don't know, I think of Evanston as trying to be a little bit different, and I don't see this really embracing as Evanston. neither here nor there. It's a good thing.
Anything else before we run through the standards? First, we'll run through the standards for special use, and as we've discussed, that is specific to the request for alteration to the existing drive-through facility. Standard number 1 is the requested special use, one of the listed special uses for the zoning district in which the property lies, and it is. Standard number, or let's go with letters here, B, since that's what it says on my thing. So A and B. So standard B is, does the requested special use comply with the purposes and policies of the comprehensive general plan and with the zoning ordinance? Generally speaking, this is a commercial area, and it would be expected that a certain number of drive-throughs would be consistent with that, and the drive-through certainly does further support the business on that frontage. So I believe from that vantage point, the standard has been met.
I agree.
Standard number C does not cause a negative cumulative effect in combination with existing special uses or as a category of land use. Given the general existence of the special use already for a drive-through facility, as a general use for the area, there hasn't been any evidence that there would be any negative cumulative effect from the continued existence of a drive-through on this property. So I believe that standard's been met.
I would agree.
Agree.
Standard number D, the requested special use does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. Again, because we already have evidence in terms of it being existing in some form on the property at this point, and the fact that it's in conjunction with redoing the shopping center as a whole, it certainly seems that this will not diminish the value of the property in the neighborhood. If anything, improving that. So I believe the standard has been met.
Agreed.
Standard number E, the requested special use is adequately served by public facilities and services. Again, the drive-through doesn't really impact public facilities and services all that much, other than, I suppose, bringing more people to the site and more and the general traffic and road use that it brings. But I don't expect a significant change to that road use that would be so drastic that it couldn't be served by existing facilities and services. So I believe that standard has been met.
I agree.
Agreed.
Standard number F, the requested special use does not cause undue traffic congestion. Based on my previous testimony, I do not believe this standard has been met in the specific configuration that the drive-through is placed on the site. I believe that it is going to be more of a congestion issue, and therefore I do not believe the standard has been met. Are there other thoughts?
I would have to disagree. I believe the standard has been met. In looking at the way that the structure currently stands, the drive-through is really not in a vastly different location than where it is proposed. If anything, it has improved sight lines for being able to exit from the east side of the property, because you do not have the corner of the building which goes into the corner of the lot.
Since we're only commenting on the drive-through, I would agree. I don't see an impact.
I concur with Clara and Matt.
As do I.
Okay. Standard number G, the requested special use preserves significant historical and architectural resources. While this is an existing building that will be partially torn down, I think that we can probably all agree that it is not significant in either historical or architectural content.
Agreed.
Standard number H, the requested special use preserves significant natural and environmental resources. While we are unfortunately in this case tearing down a building and rebuilding, I would certainly hope that along with that we would be certainly improving the energy efficiency and all the mechanical units that go along to serving that. And it has been noted that the applicant will at minimum need to comply with five of the items on the City of Evanston's green list. So from that point, I believe the standard's been met.
I agree.
Agreed.
Standard number I, the requested special use complies with all other applicable regulations. As Mr. Rogers requested from staff, it does appear that the applicant is currently in compliance with their existing use, and there's no indication that this proposal would otherwise be non-compliant with all other city regulations. So I believe the standard's been met.
I agree.
Agreed.
So we've run through the standards now. Is there a motion from the board regarding the requested special use for a drive-through?
I have a question for staff. Which one of the two numbers that we have is this case?
There you go.
I've got 13 or 14.
12.
12 is the plan.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, 12.
So the special use is 12 ZMJV-0013. And the variation is 0014, as in order of the description on here.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. So with that, I would move that in the matter 12 ZMJV-0013, the special use for 635 Chicago Avenue, that we recommend approval to City Council with the conditions, because I can sneak them in, that the applicant pay particular attention to the city's garbage collection plan, litter pickup, and do everything within its power to make the employees park somewhere other than within the lot.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. And then moving on, we'll run through the standards for the major variance. And in this case, we are reviewing the standards with regard to the required 10-foot setback at the rear of the property. Standard number A, the requested variance will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. I think this is a little bit difficult since I don't know that we have all the answers, but in terms of the use of the rear of the property, but generally speaking, I don't know if it will go so far as to be a substantial adverse impact at this point in time based on the testimony that has been available with regard to the 10-foot setback. So I believe that this standard has been met.
I would agree that it is met.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Standard number B, the requested variance is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. While we have debated this evening with regard to the intent of the zoning ordinance on this matter, I have to believe that there was good intent in placing that requirement as a buffer, and I have not quite heard. I have not quite heard good reason to oppose that at this point in time. So I do not believe that at this point it is meeting the intent of the zoning ordinance. Are there other comments?
I would disagree. I believe that it is meeting the intent of the zoning ordinance. I believe the intent of the zoning ordinance was to provide some level of separation between a commercial venture such as this and a residential neighborhood. And with the 20-foot alley existing between the two, I believe that, as we often do during cases where rear yard setbacks, side yard setbacks are not properly met, but we take into consideration the alley that exists, which is typically a smaller alley than what is there now. I do feel that the overall intent of the zoning ordinance has been met.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
I tend to agree with Matt. I do see a little bit of a gray area in this whole, abutting immediately adjacent to that sort of thing. I mean, the alley does provide a buffer, in my opinion, that makes it easier for me to see how it's keeping within the intent of the zoning ordinance.
I would also say the standard has been met.
I do not think the standard has been met.
Thank you. Standard number C, the requested variance has a hardship, the applicant has a hardship or practical difficulty that is peculiar to the property. As Mr. Strusener indicated even at one point, there does not seem to be kind of a pure hardship that seems available, given the fact that there might be other options even for creating the necessary number of parking spaces that are required for the shopping center, and in fact potentially maintaining all of the parking that they propose to add. So I did fail to hear enough testimony to persuade me that there is a particular hardship on this issue. Are there other comments?
I once again will disagree. I believe that in trying to put in the number of parking spaces that make this a viable working space, short of placing parking spaces immediately off of the alley, which I don't think is in anyone's best interest, and maintaining a working drive-through, that there really is very little on this site that they can do to make this plan work within the footprint. If they were tearing down the entire space, including the existing outlot buildings, I think it could be reworked a little better. But considering that those are remaining, I think that this really is the best working for them to get their parking spaces that are necessary.
Anyone else on the standard regarding hardship, item number C?
I'm kind of torn on this one. I honestly don't see the hardship, and I could possibly see how the layout could possibly be reconfigured to, I don't know. I might go with Lori on this one.
Agreed. I don't see a hardship.
I would say based on what they have to work with, they've done the best that they can. I mean, as a consumer, I think I'd prefer the proposed layout. Whether it's technically a hardship, I don't know if I could say it's a hardship, but.
Standard number D, would the property owner suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience? I'm just going to adopt my previous comments on this one as well.
I will as well.
Okay. Down the row?
Agreed.
Okay. Standard number E, the requested variance is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property. I believe that this standard has been met. I don't know that it is so much to extract additional income. The applicant has stated that they do expect to continue their long-term ownership. So there's no, turnaround for that. It's just, really, if anything, long overdue kind of maintenance and renewal of the property. So I believe the standard has been met.
I do
Agreed.
too. I also would just make mention of the fact that the applicant did state that in the long run, this is actually probably going to cost him money, at least in the upfront stage of this.
Thank you. Standard number F, the requested variance does not have a the applicant does not have a hardship or practical difficulty that was created by any person having any interest in the property. I guess by default, we've sort of discussed whether or not there is a hardship or not, but certainly whether there is or isn't, I don't know that it's been created by anyone with an interest in the property. So I guess I would have to say the standard's met.
Agreed.
I agree.
Agreed. Standard number G, the requested variance is limited to the minimum change necessary to alleviate the particular hardship or practical difficulty. Again, based on my previous comments, I do not believe that it has been demonstrated fully that this is the minimum change necessary to alleviate the hardship, even going so much as to consider other options that were not as drastic in reconfiguring, but such as the angled parking. So I stand by my previous information as well and do not believe the standard's been met. Are there other comments?
I would stand by my previous comments. I also would just add that, while it doesn't necessarily apply to this particular standard, I'll just mention it anyway, that I think the creation of a green buffer between the parking lot and the pedestrian way and Chicago Avenue itself actually will, in the long run, soften the whole block. This is an area where there are an awful lot of buildings that face straight up on the street, and I'm actually somewhat relieved to see the building no longer be right on the sidewalk.
Is there anything further or a motion regarding the requested major variance?
Question for staff on this one. We are just making a recommendation to City Council on this, although typically we are a determining body on these. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Then in the matter 12 ZMJV 0014 regarding 635 Chicago Avenue, I would move that we grant the requested variance of a 0-foot setback on the public alley with a few minor conditions placed on it. That no additional dumpsters be placed in the alley, that everything that is there can remain there, but nothing new be placed into that alleyway. That any deliveries, in the alley, which should be limited to one weekly large truck, be done during off-peak times if that can be negotiated with Walgreens, so that it's not during the evening and not at 7 or 9 in the morning when everybody is trying to get out to go to work. And that any deliveries not block the pedestrian crossing on Keeney Street. And further, that any deliveries other than that one large truck be delivered through the front of the store with trucks parking in the lot as necessary.
Just to make one clarification, you did confirm that we were recommending on this issue. So would you accept I believe you said grant. So would you accept a change to recommend?
It's a recommendation to City
Okay.
Council, not a granting.
So with that amended motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so just to carry through and review the recommendation to City Council with regard to the special use for the drive-through in its reconfigured location is affirmative 4-1. And the recommendation to City Council with regard to the proposed variance for the 10-foot setback is currently in the negative 3-2. Correct? All right, thank you. And I believe that completes the matters for the zoning board, and we will turn it over to the Plan Commission for their deliberation.
Thank you. We will give them a few minutes to...
Do you want us to stay? Can we?
You're welcome to stay.
Oh, 5-minute break?
We'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
And you're welcome to stay or leave.
Do we have to take a 5-minute break? We just had a pretty long break. And a couple of us
staff get a 5-minute break?
Okay.
We have a few members that are on tight.
Understand?
On the clock. On the clock.
I need to use the head and get a drink.
We will take a quick break then for city staff, and hopefully it'll be less than 5 minutes.
I'm going to take this.
I think this is.
Leg room. Now I got leg room.
There were people who wanted.
Can I ask a question of the Plan
Certainly.
Commission?
Go ahead.
With the way that recommendation went, I'm wondering if it's a waste of your time to...
I don't mean to interrupt, but should we probably have his question be on the record?
Yeah,
If
when
it-
we're in session.
If it was a question about procedure, we can do it. It's a substantive question, so we'll have to wait.
I was going to ask Craig that. So I'll wait.
Maybe I better wait until everybody's here.
Or I'll wait. But I
going to-
think with the way that went, if I understand it correctly, that, we need to remove the request in the presentation before you, and there's a chance we won't be back. That's not a threat. I'm just saying that I think we're done.
Not done.
I don't think so.
Not done.
Oh, that's what I'm asking.
No, we'll ask them to recap, and then I'll explain why you're not done.
Okay.
A 0-foot setback? Are you kidding me? Are those people out of their bloody minds?
I'd like to go to the council with the recommendation that it works.
Should have stayed here. They're coming back.
I don't know how
Is the Plan Commission ready? Does city staff need another minute? Maybe 2.
The building was built at the zero.
Yeah. All the small retail.
Yeah, that's what it's over there now.
Yeah.
Currently, it's built to zero.
The retail is.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
the retail is, but Walgreens isn't.
No.
No. And now they voted for a 10-foot setback for Walgreens. Right? Am I right?
They did not approve
No,
the
they
zero.
didn't.
They did not
They
approve
didn't
the
approve
zero.
the zero.
Don't want to speak on.
So they're
So
saying
they're insisting
they want 10. They want 10 feet.
Then I will make that clear.
The existing doesn't have 10 feet.
You'll hear exactly what I just said in 2 minutes.
Okay. All right.
It's going to go to city council.
Sure, of course.
Jesus Christ. Out of your mind. Yeah, their motion.
Yeah, to blow back.
Oh, there is something in there about landscape. I've read it somewhere.
What is before the Plan Commission is the special use as proposed, notwithstanding the action of the ZBA, because their action is a recommendation to the council, and we need to provide the council with a recommendation of the special use as proposed. So what we need to do is address the standards and then make a recommendation. The standards begin with the special use standards, and then there, because planning and developments in Illinois are special uses, and then we'll move to the specific standards for this zone. And everyone should have in front of them a copy of plan development special use standards. Looks like this.
I have it now.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg.
Are there any conditions that the members of the Plan Commission believe should be attached to the special use? Other than the special use, the plan unit development, if granted, shall be consistent with the testimony presented in this hearing and in the exhibits. Then let's begin with the standards for special use. Is it one of the special uses specifically listed in the zoning ordinance? And plan unit development is. Is it in keeping with the purposes and policies of the adopted general plan, comprehensive general plan, and the zoning ordinance as amended from time to time? I see a lot of heads nodding. We need just a few reasons. The heads were nodding in the affirmative. So can anyone give us any verbiage?
Can't we do if we agree with all of these, can we do a blanket
No, we have to make a finding on the standards,
on each individual one?
each one.
Presented, and the material presented, and the recommendations.
I suppose is closer.
Sorry, what was your question?
Go ahead.
Based on the consideration and review of the application, the materials that were submitted to us in support of the application, the staff recommendation report, as well as the testimony that was presented here today.
And in particular, the statement in the materials on how this proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It will not cause a negative cumulative effect when considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of the various special uses of all types in the immediate neighborhood and the effect of the proposed type of special use on the city as a whole. There is no testimony anywhere about cumulative effect or other special uses in the vicinity. A look at the zoning map doesn't reveal any. So I think the cumulative effect standard has been met. We have no evidence as to a detriment of the proposed special use on the city as a whole. It does not interfere or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. The testimony shows that the rear of the existing Walgreens against the alley, testimony and pictures, consists of a steel beam to prevent cars from the alley entering the parking area. The parking area has dumpsters in it now, not a pretty sight for the houses. Testimony is that the existing delivery is made in the alley, and the proposal is for deliveries to be made in the alley with respect to the once-a-week delivery. The applicant is satisfied to have the deliveries made in the day so they don't interfere with people's sleep. Based on that, I think we've met this standard. Are there other comments? It can be adequately serviced by public facilities and services. We have no reason to see any problems other than traffic, and the traffic engineer has testified to the adequacy of the streets and ability to handle the traffic. It does not cause undue traffic congestion. The use is not different than the current use, except that the video store will be eliminated, and the square footage is slightly less. It preserves significant and historical architectural resources. I don't think it's relevant. We don't have any here. Preserves significant natural environmental features. Also, there aren't any to preserve. Complies with other applicable regulations in the district for which it's located and other applicable ordinances, except to the extent such regulations have been modified through the plan development process or a grant of variation. The testimony has been they will operate in conformance with applicable regulations, and the council will have to make a decision on the variation question, reviewing the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Anything to add? It complies with all other applicable regulations of the district in which it's located and other applicable ordinances, except to the extent modified through the plan development process or grant of variation. I think this is the same answer as the prior. That brings us to the general conditions for commercial plan developments. Let me ask if anyone wants to talk about meeting item A.
regards to, we're talking on page 2.
On page 2.
With regards to A, each planned development shall be compatible with surrounding development. This is an existing Walgreens looking to actually just raise the existing facility and put up a new Walgreens, which, based on the renderings, is going to be consistent with other Walgreens, and it's really not going to be significantly different in terms of the general use and connection with actually the other part of the strip center. So it would appear to be consistent with the surrounding area.
Planned development shall be compatible with and implement the comprehensive general plan and any adopted land use or urban design plans specific to the area. There are no urban design plans to our knowledge. And the zoning ordinance and other development policies in terms of the items listed at the bottom of page 2.
Might I interject really quick? They are in compliance with the Chicago Avenue streetscape plan that has been put forth for that. So that is an urban design plan made aware here.
Thank you. The land use is staying the same. The land use intensity is being reduced slightly. Housing is irrelevant. Preservation is irrelevant. Environment is irrelevant. We have had testimony, traffic impact, and parking will work, and comments by board members and Mr. Sproul about difficulties in the shortage of parking under the current plan, and this adds more space. No impact schools and public services and facilities seems irrelevant. Character of the business district is now shopping center with parking largely in the front, drive-in window in the back. Looks to me like this character is about the same. Other board members, anything to add?
I think the character
say that if anything, it's an improvement over what is presently there, and that the buildings more properly address the street and improve on the parking and the landscaping, and there's no longer a rear parking lot, which is, in my opinion, and has an adverse effect on the adjacent residential properties.
And I'd like to add, and in addition, the garbage that's currently being disposed in that alley will, the disposal, if not the pickup, will be interior to the building.
Commercial district planning and economic development goals and policies, particularly those of the specified adopted plans for individual business district, I think is addressed in this by the staff in the affirmative. Conservation of taxable value of land and buildings throughout the city and retention of taxable land on the tax rolls. All the testimony is that this is an improvement. So it probably does not lower the assessed value.
Well, we've not heard any testimony to the impact on taxes.
Not specifically.
So we can't answer whether or not this has a negative or a positive impact on property tax.
We do not have any direct testimony, but we do have testimony on it being an improvement over the existing commercial area. There is a question about the reduction in square footage.
That's correct.
Well, and one can surmise that if Walgreens is willing to build a new building here, that building is going to be here longer than an older building. So by virtue of the fact that Walgreens is making a long-term commitment, that will better assure that they will be paying taxes here longer than someone with an older building.
The question of whether the planned development permit shall be valid for a period longer than a year. What was the testimony on when they would begin construction?
Construction would begin February of 2013, which is within the timeline of pulling a permit.
And if not, the
under a plan
council
development.
has to extend that at its sole discretion, so there's not much for us to find. Landscaping treatment within the plan development shall be provided in accordance with the requirements set forth in Chapter 17. We have to rely on staff report for that.
Chapter 17 is our landscape requirement, yet there is no specific requirement at this time. Again, they do comply with the Chicago Avenue streetscape. They've hired the engineer that did the exact plans in early 2005.
That brings us to page 4, item A. And it refers to planned developments immediately abutting residential property. And I believe this is abutting an alley. Item B.
I believe item B is supported by the renderings and the drawings depicting the walkways, their location, and the testimony that you heard from Mr. Schuessner, as well as the testimony from Gowalt Hamilton. I believe with regard to C, the evidence is that was shown also from Gowalt Hamilton, Mr. Schuessner, as well as the drawings and the traffic circulation plans.
And would you make the same findings for D?
I would.
That brings us to E.
I would say except on C for the single delivery a week that might be blocking that alley.
Testimony was that it's a 20-foot alley and that they would not block the alley.
Okay.
And I know the zoning authorities will be watching. E, underground installation of utilities in public ways and private extensions.
I don't think that we heard any specific evidence on this because I think the evidence is implicit because whatever utilities or whatever is being utilized to provide the resources that the facility needs obviously they exist and they're probably underground to some extent.
I think there was a reference to stormwater retention, however.
Yes.
Okay.
The drawings also show stormwater retention in the parking areas of about 6 inches, I think, maximum. For every plan development, there should be a market feasibility statement indicating the market consumer areas. We don't have such a statement, but we also don't have a change of use. Every plan development, including 20 units or more, shall be provided with this traffic circulation impact study. I don't think we have 20 units.
Dwelling units.
Dwelling units. Yeah. And has the zoning administrator required any additional studies? Mr. Zoning Administrator. Answer to that was no. Brings us to page 5. Have no request for a height increase over what's permitted. No request for additional dwelling units. We have no lot line directly abutting a residential district and a decrease in floor area ratio, which resolves 5. Having addressed the standards, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the proposed plan unit development for the subject property.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Ulrich?
As I said before, I favor this project. Regrettably, I can't vote in favor of it only because I don't have a vote. I'm an associate member, not a full member. But were I a full member, I would vote yes for this outstanding project.
I think it will enhance the Chicago Avenue corridor significantly.
Any other discussion?
I would also like to add that I was impressed with the way this project takes into account the comments of citizens, even those who were somewhat critical of the project, particularly with regard to the installation of the bicycle areas, and also being sensitive, I think, showing sensitivity to concerns over garbage and waste in the alley area.
Scott, and I also think that this is a really good project for Chicago Avenue, and it will help complete Chicago Avenue. So,
any other comments?
Well, go ahead.
I do believe that it's a significant improvement. And also, if we listen to Mr. Marshall, I think he wasn't overly critical. And it appears that there is actually goodwill here and an effort to actually work things out. But it's a significant improvement. And also, I'd like to add that Kinney is usually not that congested to begin with. You can always find parking on Kinney.
I think this is a rare and exceptional opportunity when a developer and a building owner comes before us with the prospect of improving their property, when for it to stay as it is existing would certainly be just as profitable. This is a significant improvement to the site. It'll be a significant improvement to the operations of of all the retail, and will provide us with the kind of landscaping and streetscape improvements which are so important to improve the quality of life along Chicago Avenue. And for the life of me, I don't understand. I'm somewhat bemused as to how this 10-foot standard even came into consideration, given that this property, in my opinion, does not abut a residential property. It abuts a public alley. So, congratulations on a fine project.
I just want to say thank you, too. I echo Commissioner, my fellow Commissioner Galloway's comment, and I just want to add, with regards to the 10-foot setback issue, and it's potentially beyond our scope, but this is not only important, I think, for the people who live in the area, but I think it's important for everything going on Chicago Avenue for this particular project to be approved and to be done so that people see it and that it spurs other development and other people to take the kind of consideration that you took on your own initiative when you didn't have to. And that has to be the experience that comes out of this particular hearing. When your fellow property owners, commercial property owners in the area ask you, well, how did it go before the Plan Commission? How did it go before the ZBA? You can say that the experience was positive, everybody who wanted to come forward and give feedback, and that you did your best to accommodate the critiques, the criticisms, more importantly, that other people will say, you know what, I think I'm going to try to do the same thing. I think is just as important as the effect that it has on people like me that live in the community, but the other businesses as well. Thank you.
Before we vote, I'd like to thank the chair and the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Thank you for working with us and deliberating and having this joint hearing and separate deliberations. The motion is to recommend approval on the plan unit development. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? The recommendation is in the affirmative.
Do we not have to vote on both or just the one?
Just the one.
Just the one.
That's all we have.
Just the plan development.
Before we adjourn, can I address a question that Mr. Stussener had that we were not able to address off the record? You can step in, Mr. Stussener, if I misquote you, but I believe that you were kind of wanting to understand a little bit more about the process of going forward and what the recommendation of the zoning board means. And would that be an accurate summary of your question?
Well, I'd like to make a brief comment about my comments. I've been standing before groups like this for 40 years, and it terribly upsets me when people work hard with staff, get approved by boards, and then council overrides all the hard work that staff does and all the hard work that boards do. And so my reaction, I'm a guest in your community. If you don't want me to do the development, that's fine. If you want, I agree with all the comments that were said here. This happened to not be profit motivated. This was a dedicated architect planner driving by his property and saying something should be done here. It upsets me that I have to go ask the board to overrule your decision. That is my feeling about
Understood, but you had, I thought, expressed a question in terms of the meaning
No, the procedure.
and the
I understand that I now have to go ask the council to overrule your recommendation. I feel uncomfortable doing that.
This is technically true. However, I would just like to say, and I certainly understand how you feel, and we do, as you can imagine, run into such scenarios on a regular basis. However, we do encourage you to go on to City Council. I think you didn't hear from anybody on the zoning board that they were not encouraging of your project in general. They were very much so encouraging of that, and they would like to see you go on to City Council. And furthermore, we would certainly state that, we hope that you can take our comments into heart and understand that potentially the lacking is not so much in the proposal, but in the backup information to illustrate that you have met the standards that we are required to review for. So I would certainly encourage you to review the options or issues that we discussed and be able to explain to council why those options do or don't work better than what you have presented to us, so that they have the full information that maybe some of the board members here weren't able to see based on the information that we had. Unfortunately, we have to make a decision based on what's in front of us, not necessarily everything that we would want to have. So I would certainly encourage you to look at all the options, and who knows, maybe you find something interesting or better, but encourage you to look at those options as you go forward to City Council, and be able to further show your case to them, because you have that, you're granted that opportunity to make your case yet again, and potentially better. So
it is now 10 minutes to 10. Yes. And the hearing, the joint hearing has ended, and I know the Plan Commission is anxious to go forward so that the Plan Commission hearing can also end.
Could I just make one comment just to clarify procedure here? Both the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals are recommending bodies in these matters. Normally, if Zoning Board of Appeals was on its own only considering a variation, it would be a final authority unless that variation dealt with parking or height. In this matter, what happens is all of this is a recommendation. No final decision's been made tonight, no final approval or disapproval. All of these recommendations and comments get packaged together and get sent to the Planning and Development Committee of City Council, and the City Council makes the final decision.
We'll take about 1 or 2 minute recess for people in the audience who don't want to stay to get up and go, and those who want to stay for the next items are welcome to stay.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.